This is Mystery Case Files Ravenhurst for Windows, by Big Fish Games and released in 2009. This is the third game in the Mystery Case Files franchise, and that started back in 2006. The game was a bit of a hassle to start. I actually have the disc, and I installed it just fine. But it's one of those games that has an installer interface that it puts on your system, and you run that interface to actually get to the game, and honestly it feels like a flim-flammed expedition. It pops up instructions on how when you first run the game, you need to click Buy Game to unlock your full game. And then you create an account so they can potentially sell you more games in the future. And of course this process doesn't work, because the servers are down now, so awesome. But there are ways to get around it, and of course I did, and here we are. Eventually when it was loaded, I got to experience a game style that I've never really played before. I got a bunch of discs floating around for similar types of games, but I never really tried one. This is a gothic themed story, and it unfolds as you basically piece together a diary. It's a simple enough story, but to get these diary pages you have to solve a bunch of puzzles. And there are 3 basic types you have to work on. The most common type is you picking through a static image trying to select a particular list of items. The items are going to seem relatively random, and I'm guessing they actually change from game to game. It means that if you go to a walkthrough online, it's not going to be a perfect match. Also take into account this game is about 20 years old, and resolutions were different back then for computers, as were the shapes of monitors. As a result, I kind of find myself struggling to get the proper ratio for my screen. I can get it pretty close, but I know it's off, because things are slightly stretched. I can usually tell by looking at any sort of round object that's on the screen, something that's supposed to be a circle. When it's oblong, something's wrong. It's a frustration for me, but it's passable here. I can play in windowed mode, but you can't stretch that windowed mode to make it fit the screen larger. I don't know. Or at least I haven't figured it out yet, one way or the other. The searching puzzles you have here, it's basically a picture of a room in a mansion, and it's a massive amount of clutter. There are tons of objects piled everywhere, and many of these items don't make sense. I find a ton of frogs in this house in many different rooms. Clearly we are in a hoarding situation with all of this stuff floating around. You certainly have a timer, and there's a set amount of hints that you can use if you're struggling. It'll help you find something on screen. These are limited, and they don't recharge after each screen, but they do charge after you clear a particular section. You would think the timer is generous with like 30 minutes on the clock when you start, but it's really not, because they don't always make it easy to find these things. When you're searching, there are obvious items, things that are clearly what they've asked for. Then there are items that are at an angle, or they're partially hidden, so you may or may not see them. And then there are some that you actually might have to decipher a little. Like, it says diamond. I don't know what you're looking for exactly. It could be just a diamond ring, I guess. It could be a diamond shape painted on a wall somewhere. Also, there was angry face in one room, which was really just a shadow of a face on a blanket. They also hide some items with similar colors in the background, so it's hard to see, and they're going to place some items in directions so they kind of match the flow of what's going on. It's pretty clever, some of these placements, and sometimes I find it helpful if you look away for a minute to try to reset your eyes and then you look back, because sometimes if you're looking too close, it seems like you might miss it. What you can't do with this game is just click everywhere at random, hoping for a random score. Well, I suppose you could, but what happens is it will negatively affect you after a while. If you get a handful of wrong clicks, it's going to drain your time away, and it'll make it harder for you to win. There are also puzzles that are locks. It's a static screen, of course, and there aren't as many of these as the pick-and-click puzzles, but there's enough to break up the monotony. The lock puzzles require you to interact with some sort of a Rube Goldberg-type machine just to get a door open. Each lock is going to be different, of course, but when you get through one of them, it starts to make a little more sense. Maybe you have to remove a piece of paper, and it reveals a number. If there's a number dial on that particular puzzle, maybe you have to use that information there to try to progress. The puzzles are certainly unique, and when you open a door, I usually feel pretty good moving on to the next one. It feels like an accomplishment. The last type of puzzle is an actual puzzle. You have a few pieces of torn paper in front of you, and there's an outline of a picture, and you have to match up these pieces with that picture. Eventually, you'll have the whole picture in front of you completed, so I guess it's not that hard, maybe a little time consuming. And of course, each section is restricted to time, so you really want to get through these as fast as possible. I did eventually beat this game, and I kind of found myself a little more interested in it than I expected. I would certainly try other puzzle games like this. This story ended in a ghost-like tragedy, and it wasn't that it was scary, but I guess it was a little creepy. And I think that's kind of what most of these games are themed as. It's like a creepy, haunted mansion sort of affair. With the volume of games that I'm seeing that are just like this, I'm kind of wondering if these are easier to make than certain types of games, and I'm guessing they were probably fairly profitable. I can certainly see this being something to play on a tablet, or definitely while on a flight. Pretty neat. Well, that is all I have today for Mystery Case Files Ravenhurst for Windows PC. Thanks for stopping by to take a look, and I hope to catch you on another video.